So you've hit C1 Advanced English. That's fantastic. You get the complex stuff. You can handle tricky discussions. But maybe, just maybe, you're thinking, okay, what's next? How do you go from just being proficient to feeling, truly effortless when you speak? Like the words just flow.
Exactly. That's the core of what we're exploring today.
Yeah, that's what this deep dive is all about.
And it's not about piling on more grammar rules or obscure vocabulary, is it? It's really about the how, the mechanics of actually speaking naturally.
Right. And we're looking at a really interesting article today, written specifically for learners like you at the C1 level.
It's quite comprehensive, packed with practical strategies and some pretty inspiring stories from people who've been on this exact journey.
So our mission, if you like, for this session is to help you bridge that gap. You know, the one where you understand so much, but getting it out spontaneously feels challenging.
We want to help you turn English from something you know academically into a real tool you can use fluidly for real connection.
Okay, so let's start by redefining fluency, specifically at this C1 stage, because it's definitely more than just, avoiding mistakes.
Absolutely. The article we've looked at paints a much richer picture. It suggests fluency isn't a single thing, but more like a combination of different skills working together.
Yeah, it lays out 6 key pillars. The first one is speed and flow. Now, this doesn't mean talking a mile a minute. It's about a natural pace, linking words and ideas smoothly without those long, awkward pauses.
Right. The article uses a great analogy like a flowing river, not separate puddles. That smooth linkage shows you're not constantly stopping to translate in your head.
It indicates a certain comfort, a cognitive ease with the language.
Precisely. Then there's intonation and stress. The article calls this the music of English, which I think is perfect.
It really is. English relies so much on which words you stress, and that up and down melody of your voice, the intonation, carries so much meaning, doesn't it? Emotion, question, certainty.
It totally does. And speech that lacks that music, even if it's grammatically spot on, can sound, a bit flat, maybe even harder to follow.
So nailing the intonation and stress adds this layer of authenticity, makes you sound more engaged.
Definitely. Pillar number 3 is pronunciation and articulation.
And the key point here, which the article really emphasizes, is clarity. It's not about sounding like a native speaker from London or New York.
No, not at all. It's about being clearly understood. This includes those natural things native speakers do, like sounds changing slightly next to each other, assimilation, or dropping sounds elision.
Things like fish and chips instead of fish and chips.
Exactly. Little things that make speech flow. The goal is clear communication above all else.
Okay, next up, lexical richness and appropriacy.
Right, this is more than just having a huge vocabulary list in your head.
It's about pulling out the right word, the right phrase, idiom, or phrasal verb for the situation, almost without thinking. And, adjusting your style, your register, depending on who you're talking to.
It highlights that difference between passively knowing a word and actively being able to use it in the moment. That's crucial for C1 fluency.
Then we have grammatical complexity and flexibility. You've likely got a good handle on advanced grammar at C1. Fluency here means using those complex structures naturally, spontaneously to express subtle meanings, not just reciting rules.
And that flexibility piece is key. Being able to bend and shape the grammar to fit your exact meaning on the fly.
Yeah, adapting it. And finally, pillar 6, interactive communication.
This is so important. Speaking isn't a solo performance, is it?
Not at all. It's a dance. Listening actively, taking turns, maybe interrupting politely, agreeing, disagreeing, asking someone to repeat something.
All the social cues. It's about engaging in the conversation as a participant, not just a speaker.
And this is often where learners feel the pinch, that real-time interaction.
It definitely requires practice. Now, beyond these pillars, the article really digs into something crucial, the psychological side.
Ah, yes, the internal barriers, those doubts and anxieties that can really hold you back, even with C1 knowledge.
It talks about this idea of an effective filter, like an emotional wall that fear or anxiety puts up, stopping you from speaking freely.
Totally. First, there's the perfectionism trap. You're a high achiever, you want everything right.
Which is understandable.
But striving for flawless speech can actually make you hesitate, constantly self-correcting in your head. The article rightly says communication is the priority.
It's a mindset shift, isn't it? Seeing mistakes not as failures, but as, learning opportunities. Feedback, essentially.
That can be incredibly freeing. Then there's the fear of judgment. worrying about sounding, I don't know, silly or unintelligent.
Yeah, but the reality is native speakers make slips all the time, and most people really appreciate the effort you're making to connect in their language.
That's a great reminder. Connection over perfection.
Mm-hmm. And finally, that really common feeling, the gap syndrome.
Oh, I know this one. You understand pretty much everything. Podcasts, movies, complex articles. But then when it's your turn to speak.
It feels like this huge leap you have to make.
Yeah, like your speaking ability is lagging way behind your comprehension. It's frustrating.
Very frustrating. But the article reassures us it's a totally normal phase at this advanced level. It means you need to consciously shift focus towards producing the language more.
And there's a great story about this, about Clara from Germany, academically brilliant in English.
Top marks, yeah.
But when she moved to the UK, she froze in real conversations. Her brain was trying too hard to be perfect.
Overthinking every word.
Exactly. Until a friend just said, look, just speak. We want to hear your ideas, not perfectly placed prepositions.
Simple advice, but powerful.
It really was. She consciously decided to prioritize getting her message across over grammatical perfection. And guess what? As her confidence went up, the mistakes actually started to decrease naturally.
That's a fantastic illustration. Sometimes you have to let go of that need for perfection to actually achieve fluency. Embrace the imperfection for the sake of connection.
Okay, so we've got a clearer idea of what C1 fluency looks like. Now, how do we actually build that kind of spontaneous speech?
Right, the practical side. The article moves into active preparation, ways to train your brain and mouth to make that jump from thought to speech much smoother.
It's about building automaticity, right?
Yeah.
Making language use more like a reflex.
Exactly. And the article highlights a couple of core techniques. First, chunking.
Learning phrases as blocks.
Precisely. Those common word combinations native speakers use constantly without thinking like, by the way, at the end of the day, I look forward to. Learning them as single units.
So you don't have to build them word by word each time.
Exactly. It frees up your mental energy for other things like intonation or thinking about your next point. The advice is to spot these chunks when you read or listen and then actually practice saying them out loud.
Makes sense. What's the other technique?
Repetition for fluency. Now, this isn't boring drills like when you started learning.
Oh.
No, for C1 learners, it's about embedding those more complex structures and that richer vocabulary so they become second nature. Two methods are mentioned specifically.
Okay.
Sentence mining, finding great, authentic sentences you like, maybe from an article or a book, repeating them, and then this is key, adapting them to fit your own life or opinions.
So making them your own.
Exactly. And pattern practice. Taking a specific grammar structure you want to master, say a conditional or a passive structure, and deliberately creating and saying lots of different examples using that pattern quickly.
Right, getting comfortable manipulating the structure.
And there's a story about Raj from India here. His writing was excellent, but speaking felt hesitant.
Okay.
So his ritual was taking sentences from BBC articles, focusing on saying them perfectly, the rhythm, the intonation, the speed, recording himself.
Wow, dedicated.
Very. He wasn't memorizing the news content, but internalizing the patterns of fluent English speech.
That's a smart approach. Focused repetition to make those structures automatic.
Precisely. It's a shortcut to getting those advanced patterns ready for instant use.
Okay, moving on. The article really stresses something often overlooked by advanced learners. The music of English. Intonation. Stress, rhythm.
Absolutely critical for sounding natural. This is often the missing piece, even for learners with great grammar and vocab.
So how do we work on this music?
The article strongly recommends shadowing.
Mimicking native speakers.
Yes, but really closely. Trying to copy everything, their speed, the rise and fall of their voice, where they put the emphasis, even their pauses, the little ums and ahs.
Like being an audio parrot, almost.
Kind of. The tip is to start with short audio clips, ideally with a transcript. And definitely record yourself shadowing, then compare it to the original. That's where you spot the differences.
And pay attention to how they stress important words, content words, and kind of swallow the little words, function words.
Exactly. That stress and reduction pattern is key to English rhythm. The article also mentions practicing contrastive stress, how changing the stressed word changes the meaning, like, I didn't say you stole the money, versus, I didn't say you stole the money.
Yeah, that's important. And understanding thought groups, how we naturally chunk words together between short pauses.
Copying that pausing makes you much easier to understand and sound less, well, robotic.
There's another story here about Akaki from Japan. Perfect grammar, huge vocabulary.
It sounded a bit flat.
Yeah, kind of monotone. Her teacher suggested shadowing TV shows. She picked her favorites and just copied the actors, intonations, size, everything.
Must have felt strange at first.
She said it did. But slowly, her own speech got way more expressive. People started telling her she sounded more natural, more engaging.
That's brilliant. It shows that focusing on these super segmental features, the melody and rhythm, can transform how your English comes across. It adds the emotion.
Okay, so we've laid the groundwork. Now, the article gets into the real meat, actually using English through immersive practice.
Right. And it starts with a reminder, input drives output. You can't produce language you haven't absorbed.
Makes sense. You need fuel for the engine.
Exactly. So active listening is crucial, not just understanding the words, but noticing how people express things, the phrases they use, the fillers, the strategies.
And extensive reading too, but with an active twist. Having an internal chat with yourself in English about what you're reading.
Yeah, like asking yourself questions, forming opinions in English as you go. It primes your brain for thinking and responding in English. It bridges that gap between understanding and producing.
Okay, so input is vital, but then you need output. You need to actually speak. How do you create those speaking opportunities, especially outside a classroom?
Good question. The article has several practical ideas. First, language exchange partners. Using apps like Tandem or Hello Talk or finding local groups.
The key is mutual benefit, right?
Yep.
You help them, they help you.
Absolutely. And the advice is maybe prep some topics, but keep it flexible. Aim for real conversation, not just question answer. And crucially, don't sweat the mistakes. Tell them your goal is fluency practice.
There's a story about João from Portugal doing this.
Yes. He found an American partner online. Initially, he was super self-conscious, overthinking everything.
There.
Right. But just through regular, relaxed chats about everyday stuff, he gradually stopped translating in his head. His confidence soared.
That's encouraging. What else?
Participating in online conversation groups or forums where English is used, voice chats especially, it's often lower pressure than one-on-one.
Good idea. Get comfortable in less formal settings.
For something more structured, maybe Toastmasters or similar public speaking clubs. Great for building confidence and speaking formally.
Pushes you out of your comfort zone, but in a supportive way.
Exactly. And here's one you might overlook. Talk to yourself.
Seriously.
Yes. The article champions it as zero pressure practice. Narrate your actions, describe things around you, have imaginary debates.
Builds mental agility in English without any audience pressure. The article even suggests using a mirror.
Yeah, to connect the thoughts and the physical act of speaking more consciously.
Interesting. What about finding real people with shared interests?
Definitely. Join English-speaking clubs or communities based on your hobbies, books, hiking, gaming, whatever. When you're talking about something you love, the language feels more like a tool, less like a test.
Integrates learning into your life. Makes it more natural.
And finally, really engaging with English media, not just passively consuming.
I guess so.
Like, listen to a podcast, then pause and summarize it out loud. Watch a movie clip, pause, repeat a line, try to mimic the intonation. Read a news story, then explain the main points aloud.
Making it active. Processing and producing.
Exactly. Now, a huge part of this is handling mistakes.
Yeah.
Fluency isn't about being perfect.
Right. It's about keeping the conversation going despite imperfections.
That fear of errors can be paralyzing. So the article talks about adopting a fluency-first mindset in conversation.
Meaning, prioritize getting your message across, even if a little grammar mistake slips in.
Precisely. Focus on communication. You can work on accuracy later. It stops you freezing up.
What about correcting yourself?
Self-correction is fine, even good. A quick, natural correction shows you know the right way. It's not a failure. And using fillers, well, actually.
Those little words we use to pause and think?
Yeah, they're totally natural. The article mentions Lena from Russia, who felt she shouldn't use them.
Oh.
Until someone pointed out that native speakers use them all the time. Once she started using them, her speech felt much smoother, more natural.
Permission to use fillers. That's good to know. What if you just don't know a word?
Yeah, circumlocution. Describing the concept. Instead of getting stuck, you talk around it. It's a key skill.
Like saying it's that thing you use to hit nails if you forget the word hammer.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to just ask for clarification if you don't understand. Sorry, can you say that again? Or what does that word mean? Fluent speakers do it too.
It's all about keeping the communication flowing.
Precisely. Okay, let's zoom in now on pronunciation and intonation specifically. Fine-tuning these can really boost how fluent you sound.
Yeah, moving beyond just basic clarity.
Right. The article covers advanced pronunciation techniques, like practicing minimal pairs, those words differing by one sound like ship and sheep, but practicing them in full sentences to get the context.
Trains your ear for real-time speech.
Exactly. And then it gets into connected speech, how words blend together naturally.
Ah, the magic stuff. Like linking sounds between words.
Right, like an apple sounding like an apple, or elision, dropping sounds like in next door.
Or assimilation, where sounds change, like
Yeah.
you becoming doncha, and weak forms, like tu becoming ta.
Understanding and even trying to replicate these makes a huge difference to sounding natural. And it helps your listening comprehension too, because native speakers do this constantly. The tip is, listen to short clips, try to spot these features, and mimic them.
It also mentions vowel reductions, like the schwa sound in unstressed syllables. Super common in English.
Crucial for rhythm, and it briefly touches on rhoticity, whether speakers pronounce their sound after vowels, like in American English versus many British accents. Just being aware of these variations is helpful.
Okay, what about the art of English intonation? The melody.
The article breaks down typical patterns: falling intonation for statements or questions, rising intonation for yes-no questions or uncertainty, rise-fall for choices, or sarcasm.
It also encourages expanding your pitch range, not sounding monotone.
Yes. Many learners use a narrower pitch range than in their native language. Stretching that makes you sound much more expressive. And practicing conveying emotion through intonation.
Oh.
Maybe listening to audiobooks or plays and trying to copy how actors convey sadness, excitement, anger, just using their voice melody.
Adds that emotional layer we talked about.
Totally. And David's story from France fits here. He was obsessed with individual sounds.
Landing perfect on each vowel and consonant.
Yeah, but his intonation was really flat as a result. His tutor made him exaggerate the ups and downs in dialogues.
Must have felt silly again.
Probably. But it worked. It trained his ear and voice, and eventually his intonation became much more natural, much more engaging. He started focusing on the melody, not just the individual notes.
It's a great takeaway. Focus on the melody, too. Okay, so we're practicing, we're improving. How do we keep it going? Sustain the growth.
Good question. The final part of the article looks at advanced strategies for long-term mastery. Because fluency isn't static, right? It's ongoing.
You got to keep working at it.
Exactly. So first, keep expanding your lexical horizons beyond just common words. Focus on collocations, words that naturally go together, like heavy rain or make a decision. Use a collocation dictionary.
Good tip. Yes.
Getting comfortable with idioms and phrasal verbs, but understanding their nuances, not just dropping them in randomly. Adapting your register and style formal, informal. Exploring subtle differences between synonyms.
And using vocabulary notebooks strategically.
Yes, noting words in context with their collocations, maybe an example sentence relevant to you. That helps embed them for active use, not just passive recognition.
Makes sense. What about checking your progress?
Huge emphasis on self-reflection and feedback. Keep a speaking journal. Maybe audio record yourself talking about your day or your thoughts in English.
Listen back. Critically.
Yes, listen critically. Identify areas you want to improve. Then do targeted practice on those specific things.
Like focusing on just the sounds for a week.
Could be, or maybe trying to use more complex sentences. The article calls it the one thing approach. Pick one specific goal per week and seek expert feedback when you can from a good teacher who can give precise pointers.
Like Sasha from Serbia did.
Exactly. She got targeted feedback on specific sounds and intonation patterns from a tutor, and it made a massive difference. Focused feedback is powerful.
So notebook, recording, listening back, targeted practice, maybe a tutor. Got it.
And finally, it comes down to mindset. For the long haul,
Oh,
embrace being a lifelong learner. Find things you're passionate about in English: hobbies, subjects. Celebrate the small wins. Be patient. Fluency takes time. And keep connecting with English speakers.
that seems like a solid foundation for continued growth.
Absolutely. It's about staying motivated and engaged over time.
Okay, so let's try to wrap this up. The big message seems to be that getting from C1 proficiency to real spoken fluency, it's not just about knowing more stuff.
Not at all. It's about application. It's about practice, smart practice. It's about paying attention to the sound and rhythm, the music. And it's very much about mindset.
Transforming that knowledge into a skill you can whip out easily, confidently.
Exactly. Using English as a tool, naturally and effectively.
So the call to action for you, listening, is pretty clear. Take these ideas, these strategies from the article, and actually try them.
Yeah, experiment. See what works for you. Shadowing, sentence mining, finding a language partner, talking to yourself. Give them a go. Step outside that comfort zone a little.
Because, and this is maybe the final thought to leave you with, what unique perspective, what ideas do you have to share? This journey towards more spontaneous, more fluent English isn't just about language skills.
No, it's about unlocking your ability to express that unique self, unfiltered and free, and connect with people on a whole different level. That's really what it's all about, isn't it?